Alright, we're going to do another tomato review today on this tomato right here, and this is called the Ramblin Stripe Tomato. And this is another one of those kind of strange tomatoes where it's not exactly a dwarf tomato, but the plant itself generally goes pretty small, and it puts its tomatoes out, and then it just basically dies. So I'm not sure if this is a determinate offhand or an indeterminate, but I'll have all that information in the description as well as my website. You'll be able to see if it's a determinate from there. But it do act like a determinate. It put all these tomatoes out, and then the plant died. Now, this tomato plant is a very small tomato plant. I didn't actually get the plant to get any bigger than, I would probably say 16 inches. And the leaves on the plant were like regular tomato leaves. So, for example, when you're growing dwarf tomato plants in general, and they're designated dwarf, you'll notice that the leaves want to curl up on those dwarf tomato plants. They kind of get curly and they tuck in like that. That's generally the characteristic of a dwarf variety of tomato. This plant, however, did not do that. It had regular tomato leaves that were bright and stout and sticking right out. And they didn't have the characteristics of a dwarf tomato plant. But yet the plant didn't get much bigger than 16 inches. It stayed quite small. I was a little shocked because I was expecting it to become a larger tomato plant, and it stayed very tiny. So it's one of those varieties that I'm not that familiar with, but I don't believe it's classified as a dwarf, but it's just a tiny variety of tomato. We'll have to grow this one out next year and in the pot by itself and see if we can get it to grow bigger, or what. Maybe it was just a freak year this year. I don't know. It was a strange plant, though. That's what it did. So the only thing I can do is relay the information that and my experience growing it. So let's take a look at some of these tomatoes. And as you can see, they're a beautiful striped tomato. That's why they call it Ramblin Stripes. So it's got a nice marbly effect to it. It's kind of rolling it around really slow for you. Now these might get a little bit of black on the top. I don't know. It wasn't in direct sunlight. All the other tomato plants pretty much grew around it and buried this thing under the other plants. So I don't know what its full potential is. So it may get darker or it may not. It might just stay like this. It might get darker green shoulders on the top if it's in full sun. That's one. I'll give you an idea of another one. This one's very beautiful, this tomato right here. Focus. Look at the patterns on this tomatoes. They're just gorgeous. Look at that. Just beautiful tomatoes. Again, it's a small plant, so it didn't put out very many, but for a tiny plant like that, it did throw a bunch of them out, and then, it died. It's just a shame. If I had known that, I would have grown 2 plants or 3 plants in different areas and gotten more out of it, but this is all we were able to get this year. All right, so that's that. We'll show you the inside. So the inside has a little bit of a characteristic of a black tomato or a dark tomato or purple tomato. It kind of has that characteristic to it. Try to get you up closer. You can see that around the seeds is kind of getting on the dark side. Very clear, the gel. It attaches to the rind fully, so that's a good sign. These aren't, I don't think I let these fully mature before I started pulling them off the plant. The plant was starting to die anyway, so I needed to get them off the plant because the birds were blasting them. So I did lose a few of these tomatoes to the birds, but we did have to get them off early, and sometimes that interferes with the development of the sweetness of the tomato. So that could be a downside. But yeah, look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? Beautiful little tomato. Okay, so let's do a bricks test, and then we'll get right into the taste test. Let's get right to the bricks. Okay. Again, I do the bricks test for those of you who are looking for a bricks number or a tomato with a certain bricks number. That's why I do the bricks test. It's not really for anybody, doesn't really serve any purpose. All right, so the sweetness is quite low on this. It's about a 4 1/4 on the sweetness, so that's going to be a little on the low and the tangy side, so I'm not going to be very pleased with this. I tell you that right out the gate. So let's try to get one that's a little bit more ripe and check the bricks on that one. This is about the ripest one I think I got on here. I don't know how much, again, you know, you're pulling them off the plant. It's only so ripe. It could be because it's just simply not ripe enough, guys. Those starches just ain't converting over to sugars. You have to let these, you can see that the center core part of it right here is still like green. That tells me it didn't fully ripen. And that's why I'm getting probably a low bricks reading. I'm sure if I can get those sugars up, we'll get a better reading. But unfortunately, I have to do what I got to do. I got to get these tomato reviews done. Yeah, it's about 4 1/4. It's same on the other tomato. I just think I can get the sweetness on these tomatoes up at least a little bit if I could just let them ripen until they're getting softer. I'm sure I can raise that number up. Right now, it's still got a lot of starches. I'm going to tell you right now, that's not going to be a sweet tomato. 4 1/2, 4 1/4 is a little low. So let's just hope that the flavor works out. Get the seeds out of there because we know that that's going to be tardy. It's actually not bad. Try one more here. It's actually not bad, to be honest. With the seeds, it's pretty nice. Okay, so let's get into the numbers on this. Let me just eat that last piece. Let's get into the numbers because I'm not too impressed with the flavor, but we'll give it to you anyway. We'll give you the skinny. Let's back you out a little bit. Let's throw some of these on the weight, on the scale, just give you an idea of the weight. Just to give you an idea of what the weight is. So this is like one of the larger ones. Let's see what that weighs. 0.7 on scale. Another larger one. 0.6. 0.7. You could probably get them up to maybe a full ounce. You might get them. It's just this year I didn't get them much bigger than what you see. But you could probably get these up to around a full ounce. That's what I would imagine. Some of the smaller ones are going to be the weight of a cherry tomato. 0.4. Just to give you an idea of the weight, guys. That's the only reason why I'm doing that. All right, so let's talk about this. Without moving the tomatoes, unfortunately. Okay, so let's go over the sweetness. Sweetness was really low. I'm going to go 15 on the sweetness. Wasn't too impressed with that. Part of that could be my fault because I didn't let them fully ripen on the plant, but the starches need to convert over to sugars, and that does take some time. These been sitting on my bench here now for about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks now, and we need to get them off the table because some of them are starting to get, they're starting to over ripen and rot. And so I need to just get it done. They're going one by one. One's ripening at a time and the others aren't. And it's one of those deals. So I need to go and get it all done at this point. They're ripe enough. And so the flavor, the sweetness on it was relatively pretty low. Again, I wasn't impressed with it. I'm going to say 15 on the sweetness. That we need to bring that number up next year. Tanginess was a little bit about average, but maybe a little lower because it wasn't overly tangy. I was expecting it to be like mouth puckering tangy, but it wasn't nothing like that. It was actually pretty good. It worked with the low sweetness. So tangy wise, I'm going to say from a scale of 1 to 50, I'm going to say the tanginess was about a 25. It was about middle of the road of the tanginess. So that would be a good number to place the tanginess for that one. Tomato flavor wasn't bad. It was actually pretty good, but it was a little bit below average. It was a little underperforming as far as I'm concerned. This should have been a little bit higher as far as the flavor goes, but it wasn't bad. I'm going to go 4.5, maybe 4.75 on the tomato flavor, going from 0 to 10. You know, you can see I wrote 0 there, 10, and then 5 in the middle. 5 would be like, this was just below average as far as the intensity of the flavor, not how well it tasted, but just the intensity of it was kind of on the low side. It should have been a little higher, but it was there, and it was still pretty nice, to be honest with you. As far as the moisture goes, it was pretty moist. I'm going to go average with that. We're going to say 5 from a scale of 0 to 10, 5 being the middle. I'm going to say it was average. Tarty and sour, there was some tardiness and soury in there. I'm going to go about a 2 on that one. And if you get the 5, and that 5 is that tardy, that starts to become more tardy than tangy, and that really becomes awkward. So I really should have made the scale from 0 to 5, but I made it to 10. So if it's really that tangy and it's above 5, I'm going to tell you. But in general, you want to be way below 5. So in this particular case, I'm going to say it was about, we're even going to lower that number. I said 2, I'm going to go a little lower. I'm going to say 1.75, 1.5, somewhere in there. It was just a little bit above the 1 mark. It wasn't quite 1. 1 is like very low, but barely detectable, but there. It just had a little bit of tardiness in there. So it was pretty good, and it wasn't overwhelming or anything. Undertones, I didn't pick up any undertones with it, so it was pretty mild. The whole tomato flavor and profile and everything in general as a whole was pretty low and mild, just to give you an idea, you know. In general, everything was kind of low. Everything, the tardy, the tangy, it was just generally lower flavored tomato. This would be good for somebody who don't really like strong flavored tomatoes. But no undertones, so we'll go with 0 on that. Texture was pretty good. We're going to go about average on that one. We're going to go about a 5 on the texture. And the skins broke up nice, so that was a little plus. So that might, you want to add a little bit more to that texture as far as value goes. We'll go probably 5.5 because the skins broke up nice. And then, of course, the production of the tomato was very good. I'm going to go probably a 2 on the production because the plant was really small and I didn't really get much tomatoes off it except for basically what you see right here, except for the few that I did lose, and then what you see right here. That's about all I got off of that plant. But again, it was a very small plant. Had I known that, I would have grown 5 or 6 of those plants in little containers around different areas of the yard and see if we can get more larger tomatoes, better tasting tomatoes, but I didn't know. So we'll revisit this again next year. We'll see if we can get the production up a little bit as well as raise the flavor profile of this a little bit. I just think that this tomato is probably a much better producing and performing tomato under different conditions, different sunlight, different humidity, different soil conditions. A lot of things are going to make a difference on hopefully bringing that flavor up. And if it comes out the same, well, that's it. That's the way the flavor of the tomato is. And then if I was to rate this tomato from a 1 to 10, 1 being like number 1 favorite tomato, and 10 being the lowest, tomato-wise, you know, as a whole, probably going to go like 6 on the scale. I wasn't very impressed, though I will say the patterns on these tomatoes were quite beautiful. Very beautiful ornamental type tomato. This might be a better ornamental tomato, so if you're growing it for ornamental purposes, well then maybe this would be a better choice for you for ornamental purposes. But for fruit production and flavor of the tomato and everything, I wasn't very impressed. So as an overall rating of the whole tomato for this year of 2020, we're going to say 6, 1 being the highest. So you're a little below average on that. It wasn't the most terrible thing in the world, but wasn't getting my best rating, at least for this year. We'll revisit this next year or maybe the year after. We'll do it again. If it gives me the same reading, well, then it is what it is, guys. That number's pretty solid. So, but anyway, I will leave information in the description as well as my website. And you got to keep in mind, if I do find more information on this tomato, I generally just update my website. I don't update the video descriptions. I just update the information in the website. So if you're looking for updated information based off of this video, you probably want to visit the website and see if I made any updates to the description on the website, and don't go by the description, because I don't always remember to update the descriptions in the YouTube videos. Okay, so just keep that in mind. It's always best to just visit the website, whether you're going to buy seeds or not, to read about the tomato and the information about it from the website, because that's going to have the latest information about it. Any updates will be there. As far as a link to this, I will leave a link in the description of this video that'll bring you over to that page so you can read and see if there is any updates there. But basically that's it, guys. That was your tomato review for the Ramblin Stripe Tomato 2020. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.